Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Movate Industry Spotlight session. My name is Mandeep Quatra. I am the VP and head of the digital on-demand business here at Movate. Today, I am joined by Kate, who is the VP and principal analyst at Forrester, and she's an industry-leading expert on customer relationship management and customer service strategies. We will be talking to Kate today to learn more about what the industry is seeing in the digital customer experience space, how the entire landscape is changing and evolving with the new technologies like generative AI, what we are hearing about models like gig based customer experience delivery, and how it comes together with a traditional legacy BPO model that has been there for a period of time. Kate, I can't do justice to your introduction. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself as well?
Sure, Mandeep, and happy to be here. Like Mandeep said, I'm a VP Principal Analyst here at Forrester. I head up the CRM and customer service practice, and I'm really focused on trends, technologies, vendors that allow you to deliver that guaranteed quality of service that keeps your customers satisfied and loyal and helps drive not only optimize cost to your contact center, but that top line revenue. So back to you.
Great, thanks, Kate. So, Kate, let's start our little conversation here and dive right into the agenda. 2023 has been a very crucial year for the customer experience space. And one of the things that has been happening is newer models have been coming in, right? We had the work from home model, we had the traditional BPO model, and then there's been a rise in the gig space. I am certainly seeing that rise in the gig space as I talk to a number of different clients and educate them on how the on-demand model can actually help them with their customer experience service delivery. But then you also have, in 2023, we also saw a very high demand and surge about generative AI. Everyone's talking about generative AI. Everyone has it on their agenda, their action planning for this year. Every company is throwing some idea about generative AI and trying to see that, okay, what part of generative AI can we add into our solution? Where can we add different components of it and how it can fit into the long-term strategy? And this all has been resulting into a shifting piece of customer experience landscape. While the companies are continuously evaluating newer technologies and newer models, they are still tackling the age-old issues that they've had around how do I find the right kind of scale for my business, right? For the holiday season, for the surges that happen, for the regular business demands that happen. How do I go ahead and manage my cost, right? Manage my customer loyalty, manage the attrition in my businesses. Those challenges continue to be there still, and people are still trying to figure out how they will deal with these newer pieces and how will they bring those together. Before we go into and talk about some of these challenges in detail in our session, I want to know from you, what are you seeing from your conversations with different industry players, with your clients, with others in the market?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. And we're seeing the same things, Mandeep. And the way I look at it or frame the discussion is, let's look at it from the customer side and let's look at it from the contact center operational side. So the customer side, your customers, they're surrounded in their daily lives by these great experiences that up-level their expectations of service. And your customers want to engage with the companies that they do business with over any channel that they want to use, over any device that makes sense to them at any time of day. Your customers, they want their time to be valued. They want that quick, timely, accurate resolution to their inquiry or a fix to their problem. And they want a resolution delivered with a company fully knowing who they are, what they've purchased, what they've done with the product, where they are in their usage journey. And again, your customers, they hold the power in the conversation. They want to be able to contact centers on their terms any time of day. And typically there's surges of inquiries that are triggered by an event, like a marketing campaign or a holiday. So that on one side, you've got rising customer expectations. Now let's look at the other side, the contact center side. Let's look at agents first. As more work gets automated in the contact center, agents are working on the harder issues. So there's a problem with skilling and agent knowledge. And you couple that with the high attrition rates and the long time it takes to train agents up. Then there's the contact center technology. Agents are using dozens of disconnected applications during the course of their workday, and they're not always following consistent processes. And that's because few contact centers have really invested in automation. And so this inconsistent agent behavior impacts the quality of service that you're delivering, but it can also lead to compliance issues. And then you've got these shiny new technologies. I mean, you mentioned Gen AI that's been around for almost a year, not even a year, that contact centers want to invest in to make their operations more efficient, more effective. But you got to do this pragmatically so that you're able to scale operations and get your agents to trust these new technologies. And then you've got the constant cost pressures that every contact center, every company is dealing with. Your cost of technology, infrastructure, your employees. And so these two forces, rising customer expectations, and then your contact center pressures are really hard conditions for companies to deliver that quality of service that your customers expect, to be able to solicit their long-term loyalty.
So, Kate, you mentioned about customer loyalty. You mentioned about the speed of response at which the customers want the answers and how they want the answers, right? So, I think those are very critical areas of customer experience management, and managing where do you put your workforce to help the customers get that experience also becomes a very, very important part of it, right? You can't just provide a multi-channel approach or a omni-channel approach and then have it bottlenecked in one particular space, right? And I'm seeing a lot of demand from the clients and the customers when they talk about, hey, we want to understand more about how can we leverage a gig-based model. Where can we deploy a gig-based model? What kind of cost can it support for us? Is it really going to be cheap? How would you manage service quality? How would you manage information security? And a lot of those areas that happen to be similar kind of questions in the BPO space as well. But how do you deploy the generative AI and what goes to the BPO becomes like a key integral part of the conversation today. I want to understand from you, when you are talking about managing customer loyalty or helping your clients design that optimal customer experience roadmap, right? What are some of the things that you are seeing? What are the questions that are coming to their mind when it comes to these three kind of operating models, which is one towards automation, generative AI, one towards gig, and then towards BPO?
Sure. Our clients face that age-old question of capacity demand, how to build flexible workforces that can be elastic, that can adjust to the demand that's coming in, that may change with the season, may change with the day. And then how do you ultimately do this? Be able to support an elastic workforce at a cost structure that makes sense to the company. And many of our clients have looked at the gig model in their operations. And the questions that they're asking us are like, what kind of work should go to gig workers? And so what we help them understand is like, not all work goes to your gig workers. There's a huge swath of issues that are high volume, that can be, that aren't, that don't need a lot of personalization, that are great candidates for automation. And those types of inquiries should be automated. Self-service FAQs, knowledge, self-service processes. So where do gig workers fit in? And again, you said gig workers are all generations, but the gig work is especially interesting to the younger generation, the digital natives that have grown up with technology, that want to use technology to make an impact to their customers. They want to be working on the more meaningful work. So gig workers are perfect for that more complex work where they're bringing authenticity, empathy, emotion into the conversation. And then you leave the highly complex work to your captive agents. So again, we help our clients understand, like, where does gig work actually fit into the overall operations? Because it's not one versus the other. It's a blend of different models. And then other questions that we get from our clients is, how do you, for example, how do you source gig workers? How do you make sure that your agents that you're sourcing have the right skills, not only from the technical side, but as well on the empathy side? What does your onboarding process look like? How are gig workers ultimately managed? How is the quality of the work that they do monitored? How are they supported? How do they grow in skills? And are they able to address a larger swath of the work? And then in the world of security and data that we live in, the other questions that we get is, what data is shared with gig workers? What customer data is shared with them? What are your security policies? What are your compliance policies? And we get those questions especially from companies in the regulated industries.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And one thing before I go deeper into addressing some of the things that you talked about, and throw some light on how we try to do things here. I think if you ask any business person, whether regulated or not, for them, their business is a very, very critical function, right? And the data that resides around it is also very, very critical area. I think one of the key things for the success of any gig or a generative AI model is that it needs to follow the compliance standards which have been set forth for customer experience management, for the customer data management, and the data handling, right? It needs to follow the same set of standards which our BPO industry has evolved to accept and be able to be compliant with over a period of years, right? I think that's one of the most important things that has to stay as the foundational piece, whether we talk about generative AI, whether we talk about gig. And for the success of the gig model, that's like the founding principle of it. The second part that comes about is, I do hear the same questions from a number of different conversations that I have on a regular basis. How do you source people? How do you test people? How do you ensure quality? And the short answer to that is, it is not a cookie cutter approach, right? There's not a one size fit all kind of a strategy. The strategy has to change by each customer, by each client, their demand, their business environment, the sourcing strategy. Yes, we have a stencil for sourcing? Of course, yes, we do have a stencil for sourcing. But then what are the sources of that? How do we go around looking at communities? We look at your existing customer base, etc. All of those areas to identify the right kind of talent and to create that outreach, whether in partnership with you or by ourselves, is something that gets tweaked as we go into any program, right? Again, similarly, skills testing. When companies talk so much about how would you test people, right? How would you set up a skills test for them? Well, all the gig workers need to be verified, just like you would not get into an Uber ride with somebody who's not a verified driver, right? Same way, your contacts should not be handled by somebody who's not a verified person, right? So that's part of the sourcing. Their knowledge needs to be tested. You want to make sure that these people have the right kind of knowledge. And that's where earlier I was emphasizing on a point where I said, we bring in people who love your brand, who know about your brand, who are the users of your brand, right? When you go to any of these people who are the customers of a brand, there's nobody better to support the customer with somebody who is also using the service, right? And we do that for a number of different clients today, any which ways. And then comes the part about service quality management. I think quality is an integral part. And today, gig model can actually provide you a much higher amount of quality than even what a BPO model can, right? We can have human intervened quality audits up to 90%, before somebody even gets paid for what they have resolved, right? Or what they've answered. These are purely outcome-based models. And one of the reasons why gig model ends up being very successful is the fact that it's an outcome-based model. It provides that flexibility to people. People are not paid for how much time they work. People are paid for what amount of quality of work they deliver. Therefore, their output is much higher, and they end up making a lot more than what they would made in an average hourly wage rate for similar kind of work working for any other organization, right? So those are some of the things that come together that drive the whole ecosystem of gig together. I think one of the key things that I feel, and I would like to know your view, is companies need to start looking at gig automation or generative AI and the legacy or the in-house teams or the BPO teams as a integrated model approach, right? The end objective has to be how to help the customer faster, how to get them the right kind of answers faster. And the end objective has to be how to feed everything into that generative AI engine so that it's able to handle a lot more, right? And whether whatever you handle through gig, how it goes to generative AI next time, what you handle through BPO, how it goes to gig next time, and then further flows down to generative AI, how do you break those transactions is going to be an integral part of it as well. What are some of the thoughts that you are seeing or your research is showing in the future of these three working in tandem together for the customer experience?
That's a great question. And again, there's not one model that fits all companies, but it's a blend of models. You've got self-service for the highly repetitive, perhaps the less personal types of interactions. You've got your gig workforce that deals with what I call the medium complexity, like tier 2 type of inquiries that have a big impact to the customer experience that is delivered. And this type of work is best done with the gig workforce. And as you explained, they're expertly recruited, they're trained, they're active users of the products that they support. They speak multiple languages, so it's a way to be able to scale your operations globally. Many of this gig workforce are highly educated. They have bachelor's, master's degrees. They have that customer expertise. They also have all the technical expertise. And BPOs like yourself do a great job at supporting and training your gig workforce, and you're managing the quality of service. And you're also identifying work that the gig workers are doing today that could be candidates for automation. And so you're continually passing work to self-service. And then on the other end, you've got your really complex issues. Perhaps they're your unknown unknowns that are going to your captive agents. But again, at every step of this process, you want to identify work that can be pushed to a lower tier of agents. So you've got this continuous improvement loop. And you talked about Gen AI, and Gen AI is going to fundamentally transform contact center operations. For example, it's going to help you generate knowledge better, creating first drafts of knowledge that your agents can use to answer customer questions, or being able to push knowledge to self-service modalities. And this knowledge can be generated from customer conversations, from conversations that your gig workforce is having with your customers. Gen AI is also going to be used to help agents with AI assist tools to make agents more efficient and effective. Being able to pop up, for example, a summary of the customer history or the case history, or even doing things like real-time translation or auto suggestions for agents. And it's also going to help with manager insights, whether that manager is a manager of a gig workforce or your captive workforce, being able to extract insights from cases, for example, to understand trending topics, and then be able to get those insights and perhaps decide that you have to you have to create new knowledge or new processes that you can then expose to self-service. So it's a very fluid interplay between these three tiers of work: self-service, your gig workforce, and your captive agents. And again, new technologies like Gen AI are great at being able to assist agents and again identify work that can be pushed downstream to lower tiered or to different work modalities. So it gives you this continuous loop of improvement over time where your operations get much more customer centric the more you invest in them.
I think, Kate, as we come towards the end of this little chat of ours, I couldn't have summarized it as well as you did with your research and your industry insight about a very simple part, that this is a continuous loop. It has to keep evolving. Each of these clusters have to evolve within themselves as well. Gig model has to continue to evolve within its space. When you start a program for a company, to what it can eventually become, it goes through its own specific iterations and evolution of different kind of contacts that it can handle, different kind of support options it can handle and can provide. Similarly, for generative AI, it is going through an evolution, and as you deploy it in certain scenarios, it will build further, it will go through its own evolution as well. And then the third part being the whole ecosystem that comes together, and how the entire machinery ends up working together is going to be a continuous evolution as well. I think the CX space, as when we started working in many years ago, at least I can say, when I started working in about 2 decades ago, from where it was to where it is today, it has changed significantly. It has grown significantly and matured significantly. And it is only interesting to see further that what is going to happen with the new technologies like generative AI and with the newer models like gig. To quote one of very good colleagues of mine, he always says this: generative AI is not going to take your job. It's your neighbor. It's your neighbor who knows how to use generative AI is going to take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Gen AI is going to take over part of work. It's going to assist you. It's going to allow contact centers to be more efficient. It's going to allow agents to be more productive. But ultimately, what it will do is it will focus contact centers, agents, on work that truly matters, not the rote, repetitive work. Work that makes a bigger impact to your end customer. So what you'll end up seeing is contact center work will ultimately shift. You'll need fewer generalists, you'll need fewer tier 1 agents, but the more insightful work, the harder work, the work that needs empathy to the customer, to be able to understand the customer situation and be able to deliver a response or a resolution that keeps your customer satisfied, even in very difficult interactions, is where contact centers will be focused on. And this work will ultimately be more meaningful. And so with Gen AI coming into the contact center, you may have employees, agents that are happier at their jobs. They stay longer. Managers, then their work will change. They don't have to work on the rote, repetitive tasks of managing quality because their agents already know what to do. They may be more positioned to working on more strategic projects, initiatives that fundamentally change and impact contact center operations. So like you said, Mandeep, no, Gen AI is not going to take your job, but it will ultimately alter the landscape of contact center work.
No, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up. Maybe we should do another segment a few months down the road with you in order to see that, what has changed from where we are today to where do we see ourselves a few months down the road later on. But yes, customer experience is going to change. It's going to keep evolving with new technologies, and I'm sure that there's a lot more which is coming on the horizon as well, with the changing regulation, changing technologies, etc. And it will be only interesting to see how this entire industry matures, and where do we end up being, helping our customers more effectively, efficiently, and quickly.
I would say I'd be delighted to reconnect with you in a couple months and pick up this conversation. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thanks everyone listening in.